Hi, my name is Michael Sherman, and today in this short video, I'll tell you a life-changing story about how I figured out how to easily create an automated supply of the freshest, high-quality organic foods you've ever tasted for pennies on the dollar. I'm talking about a simple invention that can be used by any family around the world to make the best, delicious, protein-rich, vitamin-packed food every day, 24/7, 365. Over the past year, over 13,200 families have also already successfully used the very same technique to get over tragic milestones such as hurricanes, snowstorms, or floods. Based on technology that's already in use as part of a global initiative to feed the most severe disaster-hit zones on the planet, not only can it give more food than you can actually eat every day to last through the bleakest of times, in droughts, no matter what happens, but it can ameliorate your grocery bills all year long. I'm sure you're already intrigued and you want to know all about how this system works. Honestly, it's like nothing you've ever seen, and in a few minutes from now, you'll be outraged you've put your family's life in the hands of FEMA, the government, and the greedy food corporations that make the cards these days. So you absolutely need to watch this short presentation today while it's still up. I don't know how much longer I'll have this free presentation online, so watch this right now while you can. Before we continue, let me tell you who I am and how it all started. As I mentioned before, my name is Michael Sherman. I'm a 47-year-old farmer, and I live near Hamilton County with my wife and our 4-year-old son. Folks who live here know that extreme heat, floods, and water shortages due to droughts in the area are somehow of an issue, and we've been fighting them for years. And we've never liked how our officials are handling the situation by introducing laws that force us to cut our usage or by raising the prices for something everybody should afford, like having a fresh, non-distributed food supply without restriction. However, we simply settled thinking, that's the economy, or maybe it'll be better next year, month after month, struggling not to fall behind on bills. All that until the spring of 2012, May 13th, Tuesday, the absolute worst day of my life. We were entering our second year of drought, a recurring nightmare for those old enough to remember the prolonged dry period of 1987 to 1991, and the disaster of 1976 and 1977, the previous record-setting drought. But this time it was different. Without help from the heavens, 2012 will be the last year before my family will begin to go bankrupt. Due to a 3-month heat wave and drought with temperatures often well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, burned up almost all my crops, and there was simply no water for irrigation. Moreover, the State Water Project announced for the first time in its 54-year history that it would deliver no water, and we would have to get by with water from other sources such as the rivers, groundwater, and the little left in the aquifer below my farm. However, I thought I was prepared. Solar electricity, solar hot water, and we even had our own well. Big mistake. 4 years ago, our well totally dried out. I didn't really panic because I still had a 250 gallons of potable water stockpile, seeds, and enough canned goods stored in my garden cabin to last my family for 4 months should any disaster strike. A few nights after our well dried out, I heard some noises coming from my backyard. I took my gun and hurried outside to see what happened. And what I saw made me freeze in my tracks. There were some men loading our emergency stockpile into their truck. They weren't looking to break into our house or searching for valuable stuff like gold, money, and electronics. They just wanted our food and water supply. I was ready to shoot right then and there, yet before I could even aim my gun, I felt the cold barrel of a rifle pressed upon the back of my head. There was nothing I could do. You can't imagine how I felt not being able to protect my family. And then, the next morning when my little Jimmy came to me and said, "Daddy, I'm hungry," I immediately burst in tears. It was the most devastating moment of my life. I felt like my world collapsed. I felt powerless because there was nothing I could do to protect the ones I cared for most. It was the moment I realized I was at the end of my rope. I swore to myself I'd never put my wife and son in a similar situation again. I don't want to sound preachy about it, but ask yourself, what are we going to turn into? Are there going to be killings over a scrap of food? Humanity's already on the verge of dehumanization due to hard times that continue to weaken all of us. Listen, the situation so far left unchangeable consequences, And there are no signs that it would get better. Food is rapidly becoming the new oil, and land is the new gold. They've become targets of new global gold rushes, as financial speculators sit with their thumbs poised over the buy button, ready to drive the cost of your weekly grocery bill into the stratosphere. Terrorism is no longer the main threat to our future. Instead, water shortages and ever-increasing food prices now rank as a major threat to national security. Sadly, our world has turned from an era of food abundance to one of food scarcity. And food is the one thing all societies cannot do without. Yet, how did we get in this life-threatening situation? The first reason is that most of us take food completely for granted. We live in a world where more than half the people live in countries with food bubbles based on people overpumping and draining aquifers. The question is not whether these bubbles will burst, but when. As the ever greater number of weather-related crises strongly suggests, climate change is beginning to bite. The heat waves, droughts, and excessive rainfall in the last few years have not been a blip, but a new reality. Yet, we continue to ignore Mother Earth's stop signs. Listen, the bursting of just a few of these national food bubbles as aquifers are depleted could create something cheap and fast and easy to build, because I definitely didn't have any technical skills to build complicated stuff. Being a farmer doesn't really offer those kinds of skills. So I started looking into every other solution that could bring me the security for my family. Many sleepless nights passed, and I was getting tired of surfing the internet for a simple solution. Yet, one day, Marie, my wife, reminded me about my Uncle George and his research in the environmental sector. On top of that, his life goal was to save the planet and offer our children a better life. As a professional researcher, he had all the resources he needed to do it. And, setting his goal to help mankind, as he said, he dedicated his life to discovering new technology. And he did a thorough research. I remembered him telling me how when he was in Australia, one of his professors, a global expert in food systems, Dr. Rowe, managed to create a system so sustainable and practical, it produces fresh, nutritious foods on autopilot all year round. That very moment I realized the answer I was looking for was in front of my eyes. I later found out that the innovative system he told me about was invented by a brilliant professor who revolutionized access to food and how we're able to grow it today. Moreover, the U.S. Green Building Council, USGBC, is using this innovation with great success to stomp out hunger in a landmark program called Feed Hunger Now, so people can have real good fresh food every day. One of the system's key components is the red wiggler worms. They play a very important and unique role in what makes this food system a lot more efficient and easier than any other system in the world and on the market today. That's the real secret. What you may not realize is just how efficient such a simple, innovative system is, as it eliminates the need of buying expensive, mostly unhealthy food from the grocery store. The worms add key nutrients and richness to the soil, which then produces fruits and vegetables that are far superior and healthier than even the best organic food you can buy. The fundamentals are so easy, and if properly applied, you can have a virtually unlimited food supply anywhere, even if you live in a tiny apartment and don't have much space. That was the solution to my problem. However, I found out that the technology is not new, and some greedy corporations got their hands on it and are selling these devices to families for close to a small fortune. So, while this option was off the table, I knew there had to be a solution out there. And that's when I decided to pay a visit to my uncle. He saw the device with his own eye, after all. Without wasting a second, I took some time off and told my wife and son I was going to visit their uncle. I kissed them goodbye, and I swore myself I wouldn't come back without the solution. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and talked with my uncle. I told him my story and asked if he could help me, begging him to show me his research on this device. He agreed, and as he explained to me what it was all about in very little detail, I got very disappointed because everything sounded too hard for me. I had no technical knowledge whatsoever. I said, "Uncle George, stop. I know you have some technical knowledge, and it's easy for you to understand what's in there, but is there any way to make this simple so anyone can do it?" Being an enthusiast in this field, he agreed. However, I insisted to get some basic rules. The device had to be incredibly cheap to build. I was already over my budget with the research, the trip, and everything. It had to be very easy to build, so that I could explain it to my wife and son to build it if, God forbid, something were to happen to me. So, we started working on the project together. The first models we made were either too expensive or too complicated for me to build. We had some heated arguments, mainly because of me being stubborn. I needed the device to be cheap and simple. In the end, after several attempts, we finally came up with a prototype that seemed to be what we were looking for. The design was brilliant, and we managed to build it with $270 worth of materials from Home Depot. However, I'm sure we could have found the parts at a junkyard for free if we weren't in a rush. But the most important part is that it was incredibly simple to put together. You simply had to place the components in the correct position, and because of the ingenious way the device was designed, you can easily grow pretty much any produce you want to eat with this system. Delicious food filled with all the vitamins and minerals, antioxidants you need. Even more, this system was actually incredibly easy to use, even if you're terrible at building stuff and have trouble plugging in a DVD player to your TV. The next step was to test it out and see if it really worked as well as we thought it would. So, we started the device, and I stood watching in complete amazement. The system reached optimum performance because of the brilliant design Uncle George had come up with. It was providing a steady, robust supply of fresh, delicious food on demand. I could hardly contain my excitement of what we had accomplished. Of not just having all the healthy organic food we could eat, but also the food insurance this would give us should disaster hit. In truth, I almost couldn't believe how simple all of this was. Missing my family, I rushed home with the plans. I started building the system from scratch, following the steps and using most of the stuff I had lying around in my backyard. And after about 3 hours, I built the system and put it to work. It ran